We are up to the KUZARI on page 307. And we're still in that section where we're analyzing the blessings of the Shemona Esrei, of the Amidah. We're up to the 10th blessing of the Shemona Esrei, which is the blessing of Tikah b'shofar. If anyone would like to see the blessing inside, you may have a siddur in front of you on the table. If you don't, there's a bookshelf with sidurim in the back and in the front of the room. You're welcome to help yourself. Before we go any further, I have to be out of town for the next 2 weeks on a Tuesday, so we'll meet again in 3 weeks from today. Sorry. Okay. So 3 weeks, yes. Thank you. Thank you. No. It's not on tape, but thank you very much. So we'll meet again in 3 weeks. I have to be away for the next two Tuesdays. Okay. So the blessing is Tikah b'shofar gadol l'cherutenu. We ask God, blow the great shofar, l'cherutenu, which means what? For our freedom, for like liberty, like that's the sign of liberty throughout the land, is the blowing of the great shofar. V'sa nes l'kabetz galuyotenu. And lift up a banner to gather our exiles. V'kabetzenu yachad me'arba kanfot haaretz. And gather us all together from all four corners of the earth. Baruch atah Hashem mekabetz nidchei amo Yisrael. Maybe that's the sound we're going to hear when it's time for... Maybe that's the great shofar, right? Blessed are you, Hashem, who gathers in all of the scattered of his nation Israel. Who gathers in the scattered of his nation of Israel. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the text. It is important to note that there is a transition that is taking place here in the Amidah, even though there's no really a real demarcation. Up until now, a person is able to personalize the blessings. So, if you take a look at all of the blessings that came before this in the Shemona Esrei, in that middle section, what are we davening for? Atachonein le'adam da'at. You give man knowledge. Please grant us knowledge and wisdom. We ask for forgiveness. We ask for the ability to do tshuva. We ask for good health. We ask for personal redemption in our lives. And we also ask for Barech Aleinu. Bless our year. Give us parnasa. When I'm thinking about those brachos, up until this bracha, I can think about myself as an individual, and I can also be thinking about my fellow Jew, my community, and so forth. But I can certainly personalize it for myself. Once we get to this blessing, and this will be true until we get to the bracha of Shema Koleinu, right, which is, so how many more blessings do we have? We have Tikah b'shofar, Hashiva shoftenu, v'lamal shinim, al hatzadikim, v'li Yerushalayim, and Etsamach David. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the next 6 blessings, starting with this bracha of Tikah b'shofar, are all blessings that I'm not able to really personalize to my individual self, but rather these are prayers for my people, for my nation. And they all have to do with a restoration of our nationhood to its original luster and glory. Which is why, perhaps subconsciously, and I'm speaking for myself now, I'm able to concentrate better on the first part of these blessings better than on the latter part of these blessings, because all of the blessings that we're starting now to Tikah b'shofar deal with the general theme of geula, of redemption, of the Messianic age. And what we need to do is we need to define why we need 6 blessings to deal with the redemption when perhaps one could have sufficed. So obviously a number of things are supposed to take place at the time of redemption. It is such an important principle of our faith that, especially in various periods of history, when life was desperate for Jews, these were areas of focus. And what we'll do over the next few weeks when we go through these blessings is try to get greater clarity on the distinction between these 6 brachos and what they represent as far as redemption is concerned. Each one providing me with a slightly different message or a nuance about what redemption is going to be about. Let's take a look at some of the sources. But first we'll just read the text of the KUZARI. Page 307, the new paragraph, paragraph 10. He then prays for an ingathering of the diaspora and the blessing, he who gathers all of the dispersed of his people Israel. So this is a prayer for all of the exiles to be gathered in, which is just really a physical coalescing of the Jewish people in Medinat or Eretz Yisrael. Just leave it as Eretz Yisrael. Okay. The Tur, in explaining this blessing in his Shulchan Aruch, explains in source number 1, Asirit, the 10th blessing of the Shmona Esrei, is Tekah b'shofar. God blow the shofar. Umar ra'u lomar kibutz galuyot achar birchat hashanim. Why did our rabbis place the blessing of the gathering of the exiles right after the blessing of bless this year, which is a blessing, like we learned last time, a blessing or a prayer for parnasa, for physical sustenance? Shenamar, because it says in the book of Ezekiel, Ve'atem harei Yisrael, anfechem titenu, upiryechem tisa'u le'ami Yisrael ki karavu lavo. Ezekiel says that you, O mountains of Israel, your branches shall give forth, and your fruit shall be laden on your branches for my nation Israel, because the time of redemption is nigh, is near. And as so many of our commentaries point out, and as our sages themselves point out, the greatest manifestation of an impending redemption is the agriculture of the land of Eretz Yisrael. When the agriculture of Eretz Yisrael, and it's explicit in this verse in Yechezkel. What is explicit here? It says that when the redemption is near, the fruits of Eretz Yisrael will grow. And this is the promise that God gives to our people. When you are exiled, the land will reflect that your presence is absent. And the land of Eretz Yisrael will not grow in a lush, productive way. Once the redemption comes near and Jews return, the land of Eretz Yisrael will bear its fruits once again. This is the pasuk in Yechezkel. So what is the connection? So as the Prisha says, just to explain, Alma kibutz galuyot bishat birkat hashanim hu. What's the connection? We've asked God for blessing, physical blessing. What is the manifestation of redemption? The physical blessing of agriculture in Eretz Yisrael. The greatest sign that the modern day state of Israel is a sign of the redemption or is a precursor to the redemption, regardless of what your theology is on this modern state, the fact that the land of Eretz Yisrael is producing in a way that is unprecedented in modern times is in itself a manifestation of a prophecy, is the fulfillment of a prophecy that for literally thousands of years, the land of Eretz Yisrael lay fallow. The Arabs tried. They could not get this land to produce in any significant way. The Jews come back. We're smart, I'll grant you that. And we're good at whatever we put our heads at. That I'll grant you, right? But I don't think we can take full credit for turning the desert into a forest of unprecedented productivity. That's part of the prophecy. Yeah.
When you say redemption, you just define that a little bit?
Yes, because we did have a bracha about redemption before. What we're talking about is the messianic redemption, with a capital R, redemption. Not personal redemption, which we talked about in the previous bracha of Goel Yisrael. That talks about personal redemption in our personal lives. Here we're talking about the national redemption with the coming of the Messiah, where all of the Jews of the exile come back to Eretz Yisrael.
But does the Jews, like now, the fact that Jews are able now to come back to Eretz Yisrael, does that constitute part of it? Like, could it be in steps?
Presumably so. Yes, there's a dispute among the various commentators as to how that redemption will take place. Some say that it'll happen in a miraculous fashion, and others say that it will happen in a very natural fashion, as first starting with a trickle of Jews coming back, and then as we get closer and closer, it'll snowball, so that the closer we get to redemption, the larger the rate of immigration will be back to Eretz Yisrael. So better get your property now while it's still affordable. Yeah.
So my question might sound a little ignorant because I'm not on the same level as a lot of the other people in this room, but if this happens when we're not alive, are we, we're not part of it?
Well, we won't, right. The only generation that will be privy to witness this will be the generation that is alive at the time of the coming of the Messiah. But at some point after the Messiah comes, there will be something called the resurrection of the dead. We're not sure because the information is murky. We're not sure at what stage that will happen after the Messianic age, but sometime into the Messianic age, there's supposed to be something called Tchiyat HaMeitim, and that's a cornerstone of our faith as well.
For all of us?
For all of us, yeah.
And we'll be the same people we are right at this moment? Like, you'll be you and I'll be me and we'll all be who we are? Better looking at us.
Our genetic material and our memories will be the same.
Really?
But presumably we'll all be in a perfected state. Yeah. Yeah.
Something to look forward to.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Wear something nice when you...
One more question.
Just kidding.
Are we going to have the same connections and relationships we do here now?
It's an excellent question. There's a lot that's unknown about the resurrection. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but that's another... We'll talk about resurrection at another stage. One of the commentaries on the Siddur in Siddur Otzar HaTfilot tells us that this blessing of Tekah B'Shofar can be broken down into three parts. He writes as follows, the Perush of Dover Shalom. Tekah B'Shofar Gadol, blow the great shofar. Al pi ha'mevuar b'psukei nevim u'midrashei Chazal v'targum Yonatan ben Uziel be'et ha'geula. He says, based on all of our sages' words, we can take a look at the redemption as three stages. Number one, Batchila Yusar Ol Hashibud, that initially the first stage of redemption will be an emancipation from servitude, where the Jewish people will no longer be persecuted as a class. That'll be the first stage of redemption, liberty in the exile. Stage number two, Ve'achar ze ye'asfu le'echad echad le'makom echad. Stage number two, Jews will be able to gather together outside of Eretz Yisrael to become or to be considered as one people. What that means is very vague, it's very nebulous, but maybe all Jews will be on social media, we'll be on one Facebook group, who knows. And then number three, Ve'achar ze yelechu komimiyut le'artzam. And then afterwards we will all walk together back to our land, we will return back to Eretz Yisrael. So perhaps we've already seen stages 1 and 2, I'm not sure, or at least some level of stages 1 and 2. We've also seen in many the beginning of stage 3, where Jews are returning en masse to Eretz Yisrael, but we haven't seen the full manifestation of it yet. And therefore, Zehu Batchila, so therefore you can break down the blessing into three parts. Number one, Tekah B'Shofar Gadol Lecherutenu, blow the great shofar for our liberty, or for our freedom. And that represents Mehashibud, liberty from persecution, enslavement. V'acharze, stage number 2, is v'sanes lekabetz galuyotenu hamefuzurim echad echad. Then lift up a banner so that all Jews will feel united. That's the second stage. And then v'acharze biyotenu yachad, when we all feel that sense of togetherness as the Jewish people, kabetzenu me'arba kanfot haaretz le'artzeinu. Gather us back together, all together in one geographic location in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? Yes?
So if it explicitly says Jews will begin to come back to the land of Israel, why are there groups of Jews that don't accept Israel today, because it hasn't come by divine means? It says right there, Jews will come back on their own.
Right. So, there's a lot of there's a lot of theological dispute that started in the earlier part of the 20th century, actually starting in the late part of the 19th century, as far as how the redemption was supposed to take place. And there were many rabbis who felt that redemption is supposed to be triggered by some divine miracle and not by human initiative. There were other rabbis who felt that even if the redemption could take place by human initiative, the human initiative had to be performed by people who were God-fearing, pious Jews, and not people who were secular Jews. And so there were based on that, there were a number of people who felt that all of the signs, or all of the social manifestations that were taking place in the late 19th and early 20th century to return to Zion were not the will of God, but rather human initiatives that were doomed to failure. And it has become increasingly more difficult over the past 71 years to make that case.
Mm-hmm. And yet they still do.
And yet there are who still do. And Einayim lahem velo yir'u, as we say in the Hallel. They have eyes, but they do fail to see.
They're so self-righteous. They are the
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. We're not here to condemn or criticize. All I can say is that it's a failure to really take stock of the larger manifestation of what's happening around us in our days. And that in itself, I think, is a tragedy. It's something that we should not be angry about, but rather should be very sad about. That an entire segment of our people who seek God, sometimes God can be right in front of you, and you don't see Him, and that's very sad. Okay, let's go on.
I just have a question, right? At the time of Mashiach, there won't be any secular Jews. It'll be so evident. Is that what you're saying? That all the Jews, it'll be impossible to be secular because God will show the miracles so openly that there'll be no denying that there is a God?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we've intimated that at all. But certainly there will be some kind of miraculous ingathering. I'm not sure to the level of miraculousness that it will be. According to Maimonides, the Messianic age will be totally non-miraculous. And it'll be performed completely by human beings. And the only thing that will be different between today and the Messianic age is that there will no longer be any subjugation of one nation against another. That the Jews will be completely free, and it will be a time of world peace. That may look miraculous to us and may look non-miraculous to us. It's not really clear to me, right? So, I'm not sure. Okay, let's take a look at source number 3, because I'd like to focus on the language of the signals that are indicated by this blessing. What are the signals? The bracha mentions 2 signals that will be given, that we are asking God to create, to let us know that it is time for the ingathering of the exiles. The first one is Tika b'shofar gadol, blow the great shofar. And the second one is Sanes lekabetz galuyotenu, lift up the banner. Now, what banner are we talking about, and what shofar are we talking about? And what does it mean? One is obviously auditory, and the other one is visual. Is there significance to that? Let's see. Perhaps there is some. One is Tikabe Shofar Gadol L'Cherutenu. One is create an auditory signal that we are free. V'sanes L'Kabetz Galuyotenu, lift up a banner to gather in our exiles. So one is freedom and one is unification. Why is one auditory and the other one is visual? It could be that the auditory senses react in one way and the visual senses react in another way. In other words, auditory is you hear something and you cognize it intellectually. I am free. Freedom is more of a state of being than anything else, because many times we are subjugated and yet we feel free. We're persecuted and yet we can feel free. And there are other times that we are free and yet we are still not free. We are still confined by our own vices. And so perhaps the reason why it's an auditory sound of Tikabe Shofar is because things that I hear, like Shema Yisrael, doesn't literally mean hear, O Israel. It means cognize, understand, O Israel. And perhaps the sound of the shofar is to try and give us a signal that we can all understand. Like when you listen to the sound of the shofar, it triggers some kind of understanding of what our state is. We are free. And lifting up a banner to unify us is that many times it's very difficult for Jews to unite. And the only thing that can unify us is if there's one singular banner or signal that can bring us together, and that sort of appeals more to the visual than to the intellectual. Because the intellectual understanding of our unity that will not necessarily physically bring us together. But sometimes you need something that we can all focus on visually in order for us to coalesce as a people. And so that might be the reason why these two verbs are used, one auditory and the other one visual. You find the verse in Isaiah. I'm sorry, did someone want to say something?
It's like the Amud Anan in front of the...
Excellent. The Amud Anan is a perfect example. The pillar, the cloud pillar and the fire pillar was the thing that banded the Jewish people together when they were traveling in the desert. Excellent, yes.
And another thing is, regarding what you said, I think that even in Mount Sinai, when God actually appeared, there was a moment of unity, but then there was also some kind of
Skepticism, yeah.
Skepticism that appeared, even though they saw all the miracles of dividing the sea and...
Yeah. It's sometimes even the greatest of miracles can have only a very temporary effect.
So
Yeah.
a matter of considering our history, a matter of unity will be never.
Well, that's what we always have optimism that the future will be better than the past. Yeah. Yes.
As you're describing it, I was thinking about, I'm just old enough to remember the 67-day war, the 6-day war, and I remember vividly seeing on TV the chief rabbi blowing the shofar at the kosel, and those handsome soldiers standing there, that they had been able to capture it. And to me, that sounds like what you're describing, because they blew this big shofar, and everybody felt like what a miracle it was that we had won. I felt like all Jews were feeling that actus.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a beautiful image, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So the pasuk in Isaiah actually brings both of those sensory stimuli, just in reverse order of the blessing. Kol yoshvei tevel v'shochne aretz, that all of the people of the earth, anyone who dwells on this planet, kineso nes, that when the banner is raised, harim tiru, the mountains will, or when the banner is raised on the mountains, you will all see. V'kitkoa shofar tishmo, and when the shofar sound is heard, when the shofar is sounded, you will all hear it. So again, these two senses are pointed out in this pasuk. What is meant by the shofar gadol, by the great shofar? Take a look at a beautiful midrash from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, source number 3. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa Omer, Oto ha'ayil lo yatsa mimenu davar levatala. That ram, which ram are we talking about? The Akedat Yitzchak ram that was used as a surrogate for Isaac. No part of its body was used for anything wasteful. Every single part of its body was harvested to be used for something useful for the future of the Jewish people. Efro shel ayil hu yesod shel gabi hamizbeach hapinimi. The ash of that ram, after it was incinerated, is considered to be a part of that ash always remains on the inner altar within the temple. Okay, gidav shel ayil, the sinews of that ram, heim asara keneged asara nevalim shel kinor shehaya David menagein bahem. They were used as the strings for King David's harp. Oro shel ayil hu ezor motnav shel Eliyahu. The leather, the hide of that ram, will be used as the belt for Eliyahu Hanavi's belt as he comes to herald the coming of the Messiah. And shtei karnav shel ayil shofarot. The two horns of the ram will be used, or are being used, as shofars. B'shel smol nishma kolo hakadosh baruch hu al har Sinai. The left horn was the shofar that was sounded at Mount Sinai at the time of the giving of the Torah. Shene'emar vayi kol hashofar. V'keren shel yamin hu gadol min hasmol. The right horn of that ram was larger than the left horn, and ve'atid litkoa bo le'atid lavo b'kibut shel galuyot. And that is the horn that will be used, that God is holding on to, and will be used to announce the ingathering of the exiles. Shene'amar v'haya bayom hahu yitaka b'shofar gadol. As it says, that it shall be on that great day, on that day there will be blown the great shofar. So clearly, this midrash tells us that the shofar gadol that we are referring to is the shofar gadol of Isaiah, and the reason it's called the shofar gadol is because it's greater in size than the shofar that was used to herald the giving of the Torah. But what does that really mean? Of course, this may be all metaphorical, but the message that is being conveyed is that as monumental as the giving of the Torah was atop Mount Sinai, the announcement or the great moment of the Messianic age will, in a sense, the sound will be reverberate even further. It will be an even greater sound with a larger shofar. The only thing that I want to leave us with is this very interesting imagery of sound and sight, but without words. And to me, that's fascinating, because we are such a soundbite, verbal society today. When it comes time for redemption, my imagination takes me to, I don't know, I grew up with Ted Koppel, so I mean, whoever you grew up with, maybe Walter Cronkite, but I would imagine someone would get on TV and say, tonight's breaking story, the Messiah has arrived. All Jews are called upon to get on the next flight to Israel, and Gentiles will be allowed to join them only after all the Jews have arrived. There may be some extra space and whatever he's going to say. But in other words, the point is that the imagery that is being depicted by this blessing is nonverbal. The announcement is completely nonverbal. It's not that we're asking God, make the announcement that the Mashiach has come, but rather give us two nonverbal announcements, nonverbal signals, the sound of the shofar and the lifting up of a banner, whatever that banner is going to be. And the question is why? And I'm going to accentuate this question because there is the idea of a verbal announcement as well that is alluded to in the prophets when it comes time for redemption. We all know about it from our prayers, at least, well, I shouldn't say we all, because it's a prayer that we say once a year on Hoshana Rabbah, and most women don't come to shul on Hoshana Rabbah. So you're totally excused if you're not familiar with this phrase, but it's a very famous phrase, at least for men. It's because it's the most prominent statement of the prayers on Hoshana Rabbah. Does anyone know what I'm thinking about? It's the announcement that we make on Hoshana Rabbah is Kol Mevaser, Mevaser Ve'omer. Have you heard those words before? That's when you hit the Hoshanas. Yeah, that's right. Kol Mevaser, Mevaser Ve'omer. The voice of the herald heralds and says, the time for redemption has come.
Do we have a page in this?
Yes, absolutely. Art Scroll Sitter, page 754. It's there in big letters. You say it 3 times at the end. You say it first at the beginning, and then you say it 3 times loudly. The Shliach Tzibor, the leader of the services, says it out loud. Kol mevaser, mevaser ve'omer. Kol mevaser, mevaser ve'omer. Kol mevaser, mevaser ve'omer. And it's based on the language of the prophet, Kol mevaser, that the sound of the herald will announce, Ma navu al heharim, right? How beautiful it is upon your mountaintops when the herald will make that great announcement. And yet, there is no heralding over here in this bracha. There's no person who's saying on television or on social media, on the internet, the time for redemption has arrived. This is a wordless announcement. And I think there's something deliberate about the wordlessness. We don't have time to go into it right now. The Satmar Rebbe has a piece on this where the question was raised that he quotes. He says, "Dilichora yipalei mipnei ma yitka'u b'shofar davka, halo yochal lihiyot kamochen sheyikru'u b'kol." That's the question. He says, why do we have to blow a shofar to announce the redemption? Why don't we make a public announcement? So there may be a number of different answers to this question. One is a very pragmatic answer, which is when you're dealing with the Jews of the diaspora, everyone's speaking a different language. So therefore, if you want the people in Latin America and in France and in Belgium and in Italy and in, I guess there's Jews also in Hong Kong. If you want all of the Jews around the world to understand the message, language may not suffice because we want everyone to hear the message at the same time. But I think there may be something deeper here. The Satmar Rebbe's answer is that it has to do with the reminder of Yitzchak Avinu and the ultimate sacrifice of Akedat Yitzchak. Because when the Jews reach that time of redemption, God wants the world to understand what sacrifices we have made throughout our history for the sake of God and for the sake of our Torah. And that is manifested with the sound of the shofar, which is reminiscent of Akedat Yitzchak. But I think there's something a little bit deeper as well. And that is, redemption is a wordless experience. Creation was a wordless experience. Rosh Hashanah is a wordless experience because there's that incipient moment where words fail because of the drama and the magnitude of the experience. When words fail, like at the beginning of the new year, when we are just, like being newborn and experiencing something dramatic and monumental, sometimes words fail us. We don't have the vocabulary to express what is taking place. And so I think that that's part of what is being communicated in this bracha, is that this is going to be such a monumental event that words will not be able to adequately describe what is actually going on. There are times when you want to throw something at the television screen because the commentator is just saying something so ridiculous, right? That's the feeling, is that the words, any words which will try to capture the experience will fail, will fall so short of what we are going to be witness to. So all that we will have are the sound of the shofar and the banner that will just signal that the time of redemption is coming. And that sort of goes to what you were saying, Mrs. Sachachevsky, that the imagery of the victory of the Six-Day War was so much more powerful than any pundit or commentary who could try to explain it, because it was such a miracle. Just to hear that shofar and to see the Israeli flag on top of the Temple Mount was in itself that was the banner, that was the announcement, that was the sound. And that was so powerful that it transcended the words that anyone could use to describe what was taking place. Right, and with that, yes, we'll just take one more comment.
The thing that comes to my mind is when the 3 young kids were kidnapped.
Yes.
There was a certain sense of unity. Like anybody that heard about it felt so devastated and sad. And it wasn't something that was said, it was a feeling. And it was, so I think of it as like a feeling that everybody felt sad for these mothers.
Yes.
Like, and it was
Yeah,
that
and
kind
sometimes feelings transcend words, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't it also say at Matan Torah that they saw the river Besakolos?
Yeah.
So maybe that also ties into what you're saying, that it was such a monumental time that they couldn't hear it. It was so powerful, but they saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be.